Erin. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. It's really nice to meet you.
Same here. So, Erin, off the bat, how excited are you that season two for Star Trek Prodigy is, I think, around the corner? Uh, and I,
It's here.
you were in the first season. You were in 3 episodes, and are you back in season two?
I was in one episode in season one and I was in 2 episodes in season two. So across the run of them, I've been in 3 episodes. Yep. Yeah.
Okay,
And
okay.
it's just a huge thrill and a huge honor for sure.
That's amazing. And wanted to talk about something very interesting around your career, besides the fact that you have a PhD in astrophysics, if I'm not mistaken, and this is the second person that I've seen in the Hollywood scene as the character from Big Bang Theory that she's actually as well has a PhD. And it's really cool to see people in that space dabbling into acting as well. But you are as well a technical consultant. How does that work? Your recent film was Space Cadet. I had the chance to interview the director, and it was really cool talking about the space. But how does it work? You being a technical consultant.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Like you said, I have a PhD in astrophysics and I left academia and love teaching. And so I started going to conventions and giving talks on like the science of Star Trek or the science of Mass Effect or all these other things that I enjoyed. And I started to meet a lot of writers, a lot of creatives. I moved out to Los Angeles and I started getting involved working on people's shows, even just helping with pilots and all of those sort of things. And so, working as a technical consultant can look like many different things. Sometimes I'm brought in when people have an idea and they just kind of want to bounce some ideas around as they're doing their like world building. And then sometimes I'm brought in when they're about to start filming and it's like, can you just read the script and just do tiny, tiny little edits, make sure that we're just not saying anything wrong. And then sometimes I also help with set design. I'll help do equations in the background. I'll help, sort of set up scenes, but it's mostly writing equations is the stuff I do or writing copy, that you see on screen. And so, yeah, this role as a technical advisor can be many things. That's kind of, with Space Cadet, it was very much one of those where I got the script, understood the tone of the film. Doesn't have to be too serious. We don't have to actually everything. We can just have fun with it, make little adjustments here and there, and do some help with the set design. But then with something like Star Trek too, which I'm the advisor for the whole franchise, it's not just kind of working on each show individually, but making sure that like across all the shows, we're talking about warp drive the same. We're talking about transporters the same, all of our fictional technology, making sure we are consistent with how that works. So it's a lot of little things that I do at that job.
And being the fact that you work with Star Trek, how does it work being someone that knows so much about the space and so many things in Star Trek, like let's say warp speed and doing the transporter? How does that work in regards to, that probably might not exist in the future, but how does it work for you that you have to, like accept, yeah, this is the world that we're living in?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of that. And a lot of it, too, is finding the sort of what I call the backbone of science behind it. So I'm glad you gave two perfect examples to use, because I think with warp drive is one of these things that like mathematically is possible. It does make sense scientifically. It doesn't break any laws of physics. We just don't have the technology, the energy capable. Like we still have a long way to go to develop something. But physics is okay with the idea of warp drive. You look at transporters and physics says no. Like physics is no, there's no way you can do this. And it's because of something called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. I'm not going to science at you. Might be too early for it. But the idea is that you can never know exactly where a particle is. So as you get way, way, way down, you get into the atom level, you can never know down to the hair, exactly where that particle is. if you have a transporter that's going to tear all of your particles apart and move them, you want them to go back into the right spot. and
Yeah.
so, and so because of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, that's not going to work. But what I love about Star Trek is way back in the Next Generation, which was the 80s and 90s show, at one point they make an offhand comment that in the transporter, they have to fix the Heisenberg compensator. They never say how it works. They never say what it does, but it's enough of like a perfect acknowledgement of like, yes, we know we're breaking physics, but we fixed it in the future. So those are the little things that we have to play with. But I love that example of just like, hey, we acknowledge we're breaking physics and we're fine with it.
And I have a quick question because in a film, I would say, yeah, last year the film Lightyear was out. And there's this a question popped into my head that every time that Lightyear went through hyperspeed, they would say that every time that he would arrive, he arrived, even though for him it's 10 seconds or like a couple of minutes. It's like for us in putting in terms in Earth, it's 5 years. If we would solve the fact to going into hyperspace, would that actually happen?
So yeah, that's a phenomenon called special relativity. And it's this idea, and it is like mathematically true. There's a thing called the twin paradox, which is just how you described it, that you have a twin on Earth and a twin going into space. They travel close to the speed of light, so they're not going faster than light, but they're getting like 99% the speed of light. They get to a planet, they come back. They will have aged differently than their twin. So their twin will have experienced 20 years. They might have only experienced 1 or 2 years. And so physically, like physics wise, that's how that works. With other science fiction, we talk about faster than light travel that kind of gets around that phenomenon. So things like warp drive, things like jump drives, things like wormholes, those are all ways that you're not traveling. Your body and your ship is not going close to the speed of light. You are like protected in a bubble where you're going through a tunnel that's not breaking that law of physics. And so you're not going to have that same phenomenon. But honestly, like if we take a step further back from all the physics, the reason we don't do a lot of special relativity in science fiction is because it's really hard to explain and it's really hard to wrap your head around. And so all of these other methods that we have, we just completely ignore what we call the relativistic effect, which is how you described it. Okay. There is fun storytelling there, but it's just really hard to describe.
Okay. And being the fact that you've have been a technical advisor for Star Trek and as well have been part of the world of Star Trek. Have you ever thought to appear like in the live action shows?
Oh, I would love that. If they would have me. Yeah. I mean, really what we're trying to do is create not the Kurtzman Trek, but the Dr. Erin multiverse of Star Trek. Okay. The Dr. Erin cinematic Star Trek universe. No, I kid. I think we've had one of the characters reference me in Star Trek Lower Decks. If you listen very carefully, Shax shouts, Dr. Erin said we can't do that. Then I was in Star Trek Prodigy, and then I was also in Star Trek Online. But we have shows that are way far in the future and further in the past, and so who knows?
And okay, this question popped into since I got the chance to interview you. I know that you've been working with Star Trek for a long time, but still, the question comes in. Which one do you prefer? Is it Star Trek or is it Star Wars?
I knew you were going there. Okay, so if you count up the tattoos that I have, I technically have more Star Trek tattoos than I have Star Wars tattoos. But it's not by a huge difference. I have a number of Star Wars tattoos. And I did dress as Princess Leia for my wedding. I did get married in a Star Wars bar. So it's about 50-50. And I would say we are allowed to love both of them.
I completely agree. Yes. I do like the fact because a lot of my colleagues are like, hey, you can only like one. I'm like, but I like them both. At the same time, I'm not like a huge fan, but I like them both. Um,
Exactly.
so if you would have the chance to be part of one of the many Star Trek shows that are out there, being the fact that you have your own character inside of Star Trek, which of these shows would you like to like make an appearance in the future, or that you would like to just dabble into maybe an event that happens? Because all of these shows have like those moments mid-season or about to end season that they want to like create an event for the upcoming series or season.
Yeah.
So which of the all of the ones that are available now, which one would you like to be part of?
Um, that's an easy question. I can't. Okay, so the quick answer is the upcoming Starfleet Academy. Without
Okay.
giving any details on the show itself, because I am working on it as a science advisor. But given that my character in Prodigy is a professor at Starfleet Academy, I would like to think that my legacy carries on hundreds of years into that future where Star Trek Starfleet Academy is set. So Academy is set 900 years after Prodigy ish,
Okay.
about 800 years after Prodigy. And so there has to be an explanation. But if I'm already in the future as me, then surely, who knows? Like, maybe I'm not human. Maybe I'm a time traveler. We can come up with an explanation. But I mean, for me, like, it's so funny because before I was even working on Star Trek, let alone a character at Starfleet Academy, my license plate frame on my car says faculty member Starfleet Academy. And like now it's true. And I just mean that to say, like, I have been wanting a Starfleet Academy TV show for a long time. And so I'm very excited about that one.
Oh God, I can't wait. But wanted to know, because be the fact that this is a whole sci-fi universe. Have you as well been? Are you part of the Whovian team as well? I had to ask because it,
I appreciate that. I mean, I guess we've had crossovers in the comics, I think, between Doctor Who and
yes.
Star Trek. Yeah. So it's not impossible. Some of the theories of how I got into Star Trek are that I am a Q or traveler, some sort of omnitemporal being, like a doctor who can just jump back and forth. Or that I'm a Lanthanite, which is one of the characters in Strange New Worlds, Pelia, who just live for a long, long time. Or I was like plucked out of our timeline and put into the Star Trek timeline.
Okay.
I think all I'll say is I do have a TARDIS tattoo as well. And my moniker is Dr. Erin. So it's there in the title. If I could hop into the TARDIS, I would absolutely be there.
This is so amazing, and wanted to know, have you ever got to work with Neil deGrasse?
Yeah, so I have never got to work with him. I met him ever so briefly in my senior year of my undergraduate degree when I was presenting a poster at the American Astronomical Society, and it won an award, if I say so myself. And so I had the opportunity to meet him after the ceremony and everything and got a picture with him. But that was the one and only time. And my career has changed a lot since then. And there's no way he would ever remember me. But hopefully one day. I mean, the stuff that he's done and the stuff that Bill Nye has done is definitely something that like I want to do too, is just that ability to make science accessible, to make it fun, to make people feel like they can learn science without having to go back to a university or go to university at all to try to learn science. I want to make it accessible. I want to make it fun. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens. But that would be a dream of mine.
That is one good question. That's one good question because my mother is a science teacher.
Nice.
and I am I just make content, so it's very way off of what she is, right? But do you think, because that's one of the things that she does as well, she tries to make science accessible, she tries to make it fun for the students. Do you think that that is something that schools should be doing, instead of like giving us like a curriculum or a book, like, hey, this is what we have to learn on this semester? Do you think that that should shift and make science much more fun, being the fact that nowadays Lego has Lego First It's the whole robotics section. I don't know of I imagine that there is other sections in like different areas in science, but do you think that they should make a bigger approach in making science fun for students?
I think we've tried to find the best way to do it. I mean, yes, is the short answer, but like for something like physics, it requires a lot of math. And I think the way that we teach math is not the right way to teach it. I think we need to teach math like a language. And if you've learned a language before, like you sort of learn how to conjugate verbs, you speak in sentences, you learn all these different aspects of it. And I feel like the way we teach math is you literally spend 5 to 8 years just memorizing vocabulary and conjugating verbs, and you never use it in a sentence until you're well advanced into it. And so that's what puts people off of math. And I feel like if we're able to make math more accessible, more like a language, more easy to learn, then science will become more accessible. But until then, I think pop culture is a great way to make science accessible. I think, people ask things like, well, could we ever get a lightsaber? Okay, well, that's a great question. Like, let's talk about the science behind what a lightsaber would look like, what is feasible about that and what's not. And the point is that you're asking the questions that we want to ask as scientists, and we can still teach science through that. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to make science fun for many reasons, but I think using pop culture is a great way to do that.
Okay. And Erin, this would be my final question for you today. If you could, for the viewers that have not yet seen Star Trek Prodigy, can you give me, in one word or maybe two, because again, this is a big universe and it's sci-fi, but in one or two words, what can people expect on Star Trek Prodigy?
It's going to be a little longer, but it's one sentence, one short sentence.
That's fine.
I think especially if people have never seen any Star Trek and don't know where to start. Star Trek Prodigy it's like Star Wars characters get caught in a Star Trek universe and they're trying to figure it out. That's my pitch. That's my non-official pitch. But I think Prodigy, if you're hung up on the animation, that's like, I understand, but it's a beautiful show. And if you've never seen any Star Trek, Prodigy is a great place to start. It starts out a little Star Warsy, and then it slaps you across the face with Star Trek.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. So
I love it.
Erin, thank you very much for giving us the time to talk about Star Trek, science, physics, and everything in that space. Thank you very much for giving us the time.
Thank you.
Bye.